So we Thank you. Good evening, everybody. We are meeting tonight, the Zoning Board of Appeals. City of Peabody Zoning Board of Appeals meets remotely tonight in accordance with Massachusetts general laws and Governor Baker's March 15th, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. This special meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public adequately access the proceedings in real time. Via technological means, individuals may participate remotely in this meeting via a participation platform called Zoom. Tonight, we are hearing a continued application of HDG King Street LLC, care of Attorney Panos for the Chapter 40B comprehensive permit. Tonight, we are listening to a presentation of traffic only. So we will listen to the presentation. If there is any discussion, if there's anybody in the audience that would like to comment, we will do that tonight. But once again, tonight is solely dedicated to the traffic dealing with this project on 15 King Street. So if we are all set, Attorney Panos, I'm going to turn it over to you. You need to unmute, Jace.
All right, am I coming through?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
Awesome. Well, it's been since December 7th since we last met, and it's great to see everyone together again. That time since December 7th hasn't been wasted. We've been working diligently on peer review, and you have lots of responsive material that we produced toward the end of March that pushed that effort forward. For the record, my name is Jason Panos, practicing law at 246 Andover Street in Peabody. I represent the applicant and property owner HDG King Street LLC. As I indicated, tonight is a continuation of the hearing opened by this board on October 5th, continued on November 9th, and again on December 7th, when public comments were invited and given. We are prepared to present a detailed traffic and parking analysis for the proposed development based on review of the proposed development by the ZBA's traffic consultant, WorldTech, who's represented tonight, by its letter of December 23rd, 2020, a follow-up memorandum by Will Politz of the Department of Public Services of February 1, 2021, and April 9th, 2021, and our responses there too. Is Will on tonight, by the way? He is, good. We believe that we will be able to close the presentations on traffic and parking tonight. Also, by correspondence and materials provided by Design Consultants, Inc., DCI, to the ZBA and its peer review consultants, Horsley Witten, Weston and Sampson, and Ty and Bond, all dated March 9th, 2021. The applicant's responses were provided to that DPS memorandum with attached letters and memoranda, which will be presented at the ZBA's continued hearing in May, where we'll talk generally about the civil items addressed in Will Politz's DPS memo from April 9th that you got last Friday. In May, we also intend to give presentations on design, landscaping, and lighting, which were not the subject of peer review. but still a very important aspect of this proposed development. Al Chow is the senior project manager for the applicant, and he's here with me tonight. Scott Thornton of Vanessa and Associates Incorporated will discuss the traffic and parking impacts, and has also participated with the peer review consultants and engaged with his peer review counterpart at World Tech, Mr. Emery, and I believe to productive results. Just some general comments before we go into the technical presentation, if I may, through the chair, to the rest of the board and to the public participating tonight. I have to say, in all honesty, that generally peer review and the peer review process established and refined by this board through your now expert experiences hearing 40B applications and comprehensive permits, this is now your third, has really worked and is working. Because the project team has been able to evaluate the issues that have been highlighted by your peer review consultants and modify their plans, our plans accordingly to what I believe make the project proposal better. And you'll hear why I think they're better and we think they're better in a moment. The modifications, as I indicated, for the most part, were prompted by comments and questions surrounding traffic and parking and the anticipated impacts by the proposed development. So in brief, those modifications include revised landscaping islands and curbing to accommodate fire apparatus and delivery truck and trash truck circulation throughout the property, reoriented and relocated trash areas to improve trash pickup, identified loading zones for site improving circulation, revised garage ramp for building C to lessen slope and provide more comfortable turn into the garage, pedestrian pathways refined from parking areas to buildings, specifically for building B, revised landscape plantings at development entrance and exits to ensure adequate sightlines for drivers, ADA compatible and accessible features which were refined and modified, addition of amenities for electrical charging stations, visitor and rideshare spaces which are identified on the plans, mitigation measures for surrounding intersections, increase in ratio of full-size to compact-size spaces within the site as requested by peer review, and a whole host of other things that were raised through the peer review process. Mass Housing, who issued the project eligibility letter for the site, has been made aware of these modifications and was provided with all responsive peer review data as they were copied to the ZBA, correspondence to the ZBA of March 25th. And we're happy to report that with regard to traffic and parking, the applicant and its development team are more in agreement than they are apart on substantive proposed project impacts, and the proposed development is substantially improved as a result. Carla, if we could do share screen, I'd like to introduce Scott Thornton from Vanessa, who will give the technical presentation, and I guess I'm going to be the Phil Donahue, Vanna White, who's going to be scrolling through these slide presentations. And there is the green share screen button. And
You're a far cry from Vanna White.
ha ha ha. Other side of the genetic aisle. Okay. Can you see this?
Not yet.
Hold on a second.
While you're trying to do that, Jason, I just want to
Yeah.
let the board know that as much as I thought we were able to meet in person May 17th,
Yes.
that also will be a Zoom meeting, and I'll go over that after the presentation. You ready yet, Jason?
I'm trying to get the share screen up and I'm having trouble doing that. You're on mute, Fran.
Are you just trying to share the traffic impact assessment
Yes.
slideshow you sent earlier? I mean, probably one of us could share that.
Well, I have it up and I don't understand why I can't share it because I've done this in the past and it's worked pretty well.
I can do it, Jason.
Okay, excellent. And you're in control of it. Do you have the ability to share screen? And if not, can Carla give you that ability?
Looks like I do.
Awesome.
Everybody has it now.
Awesome.
Good.
Can you
Perfect.
see that?
Yep, perfect.
Yes.
Perfect. All right, thank you.
Pardon me for the glitch.
It's fine. Let me just try to put this over here.
Jason, you have to mute yourself.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Madam Chair, members of the board, thank you for hearing us tonight. As Attorney Panos mentioned, my name's Scott Thornton. I'm with Vanessa and Associates. We're the traffic consultants for the applicant for this project. And as Attorney Panos mentioned, we feel that the peer review process has made this project better certainly from a traffic and parking standpoint. And we find this with most projects that the peer review process points out things that either we hadn't considered or certain items that deserve deeper review and deeper detail, and so we appreciate that. So what I have a lot of information to go through tonight in terms of traffic and parking and mitigation for the project from a traffic perspective, and I will try to keep it brief, but again, there's a lot of information to go through, and so with that, I'll step to the next slide, which is just a chronology of where we are with the traffic study process. So initially, we prepared the traffic study in December of 2019, submitted to City of Peabody in September of 2020. It was peer reviewed by World Tech Engineering. We received their comments on December 23rd of last year. We received additional comments from Mr. Paulitz's department, City of Peabody, Department of Public Services. We received those comments February 1st, as Attorney Panos mentioned. We provided responses to peer and DPS reviews, submitted those on March 23rd. And we just received some comments from DPS and from World Tech Engineering on Friday, April 9th. So in general, we like to try to identify areas of agreement or commonality with the peer reviewers, and there are substantial ones. It's a pretty good list. You know, the Lowell Street, King Street, Endicott Street intersection improvements. We had initially proposed a study of those, and I'll get into more detail later. Now we're proposing actual improvements and working with the city to implement some of those improvements. Installation of ADA compliant sidewalk along the King Street frontage, including granite curbing and driveway design. We're agreed on that. The King Street, Ellsworth Street traffic signal. The peer reviewer asked us to determine if a traffic signal was still warranted at that intersection. We performed a warrant study. Turns out it's not warranted. With regard to the Ellsworth Street at Southwick Road and Ellsworth Street at Emerson Street intersections, and also the Lowell Street at Southwick Road and Lowell Street at Emerson Street intersections. We did not feel that additional work was required at those locations, and the peer reviewer agreed on that as well. Peer reviewer also agreed that the driveway design is acceptable, and I'll get into a little more detail on that coming up. We have agreement that the parking ratio could be reduced. I'll get to that as well. And that the revised garage layout under building C is acceptable. And we revised that design based on peer comments. So I'm going to get into some of the site plan revisions, and there's a number of plans here. And in some case, and I'll try to highlight the new features that have been added to respond to peer review and Department of Public Service comments. The first couple plans are going to be related to site plans and the site distance at the driveways. I'll touch on the dumpster locations and the snow storage and the sidewalks. In terms of the snow storage consideration, we have 3 separate areas for snow storage. We're not going to permit any storage to flow onto neighboring properties. We anticipate using private contractors to take care of snow removal. And those storage areas will be used until they're full. And at that point, snow will get removed from site to make sure that there's no sort of seepage or pushing of snow onto any neighboring properties. So this plan is an updated preliminary site plan. And as you can see, we've got dumpster locations that have been revised. Initially, there were concerns because one dumpster location was in this area, another one was in this area, and they've been revised to be more accessible for the garbage trucks that'll come in. So we've got a dumpster here, we've got a dumpster here, and a dumpster over here. The snow storage areas, again, one is over here, one is over here, and then we have another large one over in this area. The King Street frontage has ADA compliant sidewalk and vertical curb that's proposed in this along the whole frontage. And there are tip down ramps that are present or proposed to be constructed at the driveways. And most of this frontage currently is open. It's at the same grade as King Street, so there is no curb there. But again, that'll be rectified with a raised curb and sidewalk. There is existing sidewalk and some curbing along the Ellsworth Street frontage. There are some sections where it's missing or needs repair. Those will be constructed as a result of the project. So the next slide goes into a little more detail on the sightline triangles that we were asked to prepare. And again, with the site access onto King Street, we have plenty of site distance. We've got greater than 250 feet, which is the requirement for stopping site distance for both driveways. And no vegetation or signage will be placed in these site triangles in the yellow shaded areas to maintain those lines of sight for drivers that are exiting the site. We also have a revised driveway design down to building C, where we tried to sort of create this sort of sweeping curve, push the edge of the start of the curve further back to stretch out the distance and reduce the grade. And we feel that's, we did reduce the grade through here. We feel confident that with our on-site maintenance team, we'll be able to maintain safe conditions in all types of weather. So the next few plans go through the following revisions. We added a signage plan which delineates a loading area, electric vehicle charging stations, and also rideshare visitor spaces. And we also have dimensioned drive aisles, dimensions for the parking spaces, and the short-term bicycle storage, which is also proposed with the site. And again, the idea here is to really just comply with the requests from the peer reviewer and from DPS, and also identify what some of these amenities are that are proposed for the project. So this plan shows the signage and some of these features that are proposed. We're looking at 2 electric vehicle charging stations, one near building A and the other near building C. We're also proposing this general purpose loading area adjacent to building B. And then there's also going to be, and I'll get to this in a minute, there's also locations where trucks can get into the front building entrances and circulate through the site. I'll get to those plans in a minute. But we're also showing 4 visitor and rideshare parking spaces in front of each building, in front of building A, building B, and building C. So that's a total of 12 spaces. And the idea is that those could be used by either visitors, excuse me, or by Ubers or Lyfts that come to the site to pick up the residents of the project. So this next plan, I know it's a little tough to make out the details, but in general, this is a similar plan to what you've seen before, but it's been tweaked again with the new locations of the dumpsters, move for each building, the dimensions of the drive aisles. We've got 20 feet aisles throughout the development. The parking spaces are shown, the full-size parking space dimensions of 9 by 18 are shown in this area. The compact spaces of 8 foot by 16.5 feet are shown in this area. Again, it's kind of tough to see. I'll try to zoom in and hopefully things don't go awry. But we've also got some short-term bike racks for bicycles. We haven't quite determined the number of bike racks, but there's probably going to be between 4 and 6 for each location. So that's between 4 and 6 for each building. So that's again a substantial amenity that we think for the project residents. There we go. So then the next slide gets into some of the modifications to building C, the parking garage under building C, and what was done there to improve the circulation through that garage. And in general, what we had identified were, and again, this is really with a nod to your peer consultant, they had identified had recommended that we check for spaces to make sure that all the spaces were accessible and were able to be pulled into and out of as need be. And in some cases, they could have made it, but it was the number of points to the turns would have been probably fairly cumbersome. So rather than do that, we just added some hatched areas, which would be striped out with gore striping. So it's possible these are at grade, these hatched areas, but they allow the vehicles to back into or traverse across the pavement if need be without interference from any obstacles such as vehicles. Also have an area here for covered bike parking. And this is at least 16 bikes that would be available there, depending on the type of rack. If it's a double-sided rack, it might be up to 32 bikes. If it's a single-sided, then it would most likely be 16 bikes. But those are where some of the those are where the covered bike parking spaces would be. And again, they'd be sheltered and weather protected and secure. The next plans, we start to get into some of the circulation and the auto turn movements for the Building C garage. And this plan shows a full-size vehicle entering into the garage and pulling into various parking spaces. So they're able to pull in to the garage and back into this space, similar movement backing into this space, and they're able to pull into this space with a slight correction here. Exiting the full-size vehicle, again, they're able to just pull out from this space, pull out with a few point maneuvers out of this space. From this space, they again back straight into that hatched area, and then they're able to pull right out. So we looked at the access for the full-size spaces, and we also looked at access for the compact spaces. And as you can imagine, it's easier for the compact vehicles to get into and out of their spaces. This shows the path of the vehicles entering some of those spaces and then exiting some of those spaces. In terms of the additional plans we've got for circulation of delivery and fire vehicles and garbage trucks, and part of this was addressing the Peabody Fire Department and Captain Dowling's comments from the hearing of October 5th, 2020. And again, we're looking at ways to address the peer review and DPS comments. This plan shows the paths of delivery trucks pulling into and out of the site. So we've got them split up into a couple of different maneuvers, because it's going a little gets a little busy if we're showing them all on the same plan. But as you can see, we've got the trucks coming in from King Street, pulling in, circulating around to the front of Building C, coming in, circulating around to the front of Building A, and then coming around and circulating to the loading area by Building C, by Building B. In terms of when these vehicles would actually come, we would expect that the delivery times would be scheduled for off-peak. As I mentioned before, we've got adequate site distance, so we feel that there's plenty of visibility for entering and exiting movements, and there's not so much traffic on King Street that the vehicles would be delayed and waiting for a break in traffic to either enter or exit. There might be a slight delay, but it's not something that would take up minutes at a time. This plan shows the paths of the delivery trucks exiting the site. And again, they're basically using the same maneuvers, coming out, exiting out onto King Street in this fashion, exiting out onto King Street from in front of Building A, and then pulling out from the loading area adjacent to Building B. If I can get to the next plan. So the next plan shows the access for the fire trucks. And again, working from using the same format, the fire truck does have to swing wide onto the other side of King Street, but they are able to get in and circulate through the site for either the east driveway or the west driveway, able to get around. And also coming into the area on the backside of Building A. And these are the measurements and the dimensions, the specifications that that we use were provided by the Peabody Fire Department. So we have their vehicle plugged into this to this auto turn run. This just shows the fire truck exiting or entering the site in this fashion, coming in from the west from Ellsworth Street, and then coming up to the north side of Building A to the north side of Building C, and then they're able to. This shows how they would circulate to get out through the in the exiting maneuver. And then finally, the garbage trucks. We've got paths for the garbage trucks. These show how the trucks would get to the dumpster locations, the one for Building A, the one for Building B, and then lastly, the one for Building C. And similar to the deliveries, we're expecting that the trash will be removed by a private trash contractor. They'll schedule off-peak pickups to make sure that they're having as minimal effect on traffic flow, both for the neighborhood and for the development, as possible. There was a comment in one of the comment letters that referred to Building A dumpster being located in Southwick Road. So it's actually not. All the dumpsters are located entirely on the site property. So that's not an issue.
Fran, can I, through the chair, ask a question on respect to the dumpster location? So Scott, in taking a look at your site plans, it looks like the dumpster and part of the maybe not turnaround, but the parking area appears to be over the existing pavement of Southwick Road. Is that the correct assessment?
I think if it,
I think if you keep zooming in, you'll see it.
Oh, in this area.
Yes, in that area, and then the pavement bump out as well.
Oh, okay. So that's something that we'll take a look at. Yeah, I see where that comment is coming from. Yeah, it is within the property. It's within the property or the boundaries of the property, but there may be some impact onto the layout if that's a private street. So again, that's something that that we can look at, and we'll touch base with the site engineer who laid out this area and take a close look at that. In terms of, right, so in terms of parking, we have a few slides on parking, and we've reviewed a number of sources for parking, and they all seem to be trending downward in terms of parking supply and accommodations. And responding to World Tech, we have the initial perfect fit parking study from Metropolitan Area Planning Commission, which looked at a number of residential apartment and condominium developments in the greater Boston area. And then we also have the phase 3 review that looked specifically at the North Shore sub-area study, which consisted of the towns of Beverly, Danvers, Peabody, and Salem. This in terms of in terms of the areas, you know, this last, the phase 3 study, you know, really indicated that most complexes are below this 1.4 to 1.59 ratio, and in fact they're all below the 1.6 ratio, and that's the number of overnight parked cars per occupied unit. So we think that we've accommodated and provided the correct amount of parking spaces for the site with the ratio that we're proposing of 1.5 spaces per unit, and I'll get into that detail on the next few slides. So some of these, I provided some of this, or the majority of this information previously, and what we're looking at are the sources for some of these parking numbers, the supply ratio in terms of spaces per unit, just the number of parking spaces that are recommended to be provided, and then what the average utilization ratio in terms of spaces per unit are. So for the ITE parking generation, the 5th edition manual, they're saying for multifamily development, supply ratio should be about 1.2 spaces per unit. The average utilization ratio is, you know, so how many spaces actually get used, averages about 0.9 spaces per unit. The perfect fit parking study came in at about 1 spaces per unit, or 1 space per unit. That was over, I think, 189 developments with a utilization ratio of 0.73 spaces per unit. That North Shore sub-area study came in at a slightly higher supply ratio for the I think the 10 developments that they looked at, of 1.25 spaces per unit with a utilization ratio of 0.76 spaces per unit. So similar to the broader area study of the perfect fit, but slightly higher both in the supply ratio and the utilization ratio. In terms of WorldTech's recommendations, you know, where they're recommending 1.0 spaces per unit, you know, we're proposing 1.5, which is a reduction of what was previously proposed, where we were at 1.6. As I mentioned previously, we agree that the WorldTech, we agree with WorldTech that the parking space ratio of 1.5 spaces per unit could be reduced further to maintain the recent trends in transportation. But at the same time, and I think this was mentioned in WorldTech's letter, it's a balance between providing the right amount of spaces to encourage alternative and sustainable transportation, but also providing enough spaces so that the neighborhood doesn't get affected by residents parking in the neighborhood streets. But again, we feel that 1.5 spaces per unit is an appropriate balance to accommodate those parking demands. As far as the Peabody zoning requirements go, we are compliant. The designated development district for the residential overlay, we have, you know, the compact parking ratio is the maximum is 60%. Well, we're lower at 47%. In terms of the parking space sizes, the compact spaces are 8 feet by 16.5, which is what we're proposing. The full-size spaces are 9 foot by 18 feet, which is what we're proposing. And the parking aisles are recommended to be 20 feet wide, which is what we're proposing. So again, we're consistent with the residential overlay of the DDD. And then this is just the exact zoning language from page 48 of the zoning ordinance. And some of those areas. points are located in 6.68 section E, subsection 3, 4, and 5. So just to sort of summarize the parking and the site plan comments. So the peer reviewer suggests a parking ratio of 1 space per unit is adequate. And we agree with WorldTech that the ratio could be lower, but we also feel that it's important to provide 1.5 spaces per unit to accommodate the needs of the project and also to keep parking from spilling over into the neighborhood. The peer reviewer recommends increasing the size of the parking spaces. Again, we're maintaining consistency with the zoning requirements, and we're below the compact ratio suggested by the DDD zoning district. Peer reviewer recommends uncoupling parking from the rental or ownership costs. So this is an ownership development, and it's typically not possible to uncouple parking costs from an ownership unit. The peer reviewer maintains proposed changes have not been submitted to mass housing, so references to prior approval would be superseded. So we agree that they have been superseded. However, these responses and changes were sent to mass housing on March 25th, 2021 at the time of the submittal to WorldTech. So mass housing has received copies of these changes. In terms of mitigation and specifically the promotion of alternative transportation, the applicant's committed to investigating joining the North Shore TMA, which provides TDM measures for developments, including carpool arrangements, emergency ride home services. And that's something that the applicant is looking to discuss and investigate the TMA to provide. The applicant's providing 12 visitor rideshare spaces to accommodate residents using Uber lifts or carpools. In terms of the public transportation services, we're proposing to encourage their use through posting of the schedules for the MBTA bus and commuter rail services. Other mitigation related to Lowell Street and King Street at Endicott Street. So again, this is another area that we have agreement with WorldTech that the current safety and traffic conditions pre-exist the proposed development. And the applicant will work with the city to assist in the implementation of improvements. And this is, if you'll recall, this is a location where initially we were looking at preparing a road safety audit, which is a study of possible measures that can be implemented to improve safety at an intersection. And then we were provided a couple studies, both one that WorldTech had provided and one that another consultant had provided, that had identified a number of improvements that could be implemented, could be they did the work that we were proposing to do. So rather than do another study to come up with the same conclusions, we're recommending that we work with the city to implement those improvements, which include updated clearance time calculations for vehicles and pedestrians to get through the intersection safer, high visibility signal head backplates, which consist of fluorescent ribbing around the back of the signal heads so that they stand out more. ADA compatible pedestrian push buttons, so it's easier for children or seniors to press the button and get the walk indication. And then new video detection to optimize operations, which would consist of a single camera that would have a fisheye lens on it and view all approaches to the intersection from that one location. And it's a much more efficient way of optimizing signal operations to address queues and traffic flow to the extent possible within the signal timing and phasing arrangements. So just to summarize, so the following plan revisions have been provided in the document that was submitted for March 23rd, that should be 2021, as follows. Revise the landscape islands and curbing to accommodate the fire apparatus throughout the property. Reoriented and relocated the trash areas to improve trash pickup. Identified loading zone for the site. We revised the garage ramp for building C to lessen the slope and provide more comfortable turn into the garage. Pedestrian pathways were refined from the parking areas to buildings. Revised landscape plantings at development entrance and exits to ensure adequate sight lines for drivers. We identified electric vehicle charging spaces and improved the traffic circulation through the site, and also improve the mitigation for off-site locations. So those reference provisions have been incorporated into other preliminary development plans that either have been submitted or will be submitted. And I think that's the end of my presentation. I can turn it back over to you, Jason, or to you, Madam Chair. I'll be here to answer questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's see if we can get out of this shared screen. Oh, here we are. Here we all are. Okay. So let's open it up to questions and comments at this point in time.
The chair, if I could.
Yep.
All right, I just have a couple, I guess, comments and questions. First, through you to Mr. Bellavance. Kurt, this is alternate study where we didn't do the traffic audit. When was that performed? Do you know what year or what date it was performed?
Are you speaking about the World Tech?
No, the one that's at Lowell and King Street. The reason they're not doing an audit because they're basing it on an assessment that was done. Oh boy, now I lost my spot.
I know World Tech looked at, and maybe Rod can speak, that they had done some reviews of different signals throughout the city. I believe there's 71 signals within the city. And I know they were looking at some of those. And I think actually one of the changes that was recommended was that left-hand turn traveling east at the Endicott. So that was a few years ago, I believe.
Right, that's what I'm getting at. So yeah. Have we initiated any of the recommendations that have been mentioned in the low-cost signal improvement plan?
That wasn't through our department, so I don't know if Will is more familiar with some of the signals.
I guess, Will, can you help us? And I'm just fishing a little bit here, because what I'm really trying to say is that it's nice that you don't want to do the safety audit because you want to base it on a 2-year-old safety improvement that we haven't done anything in 2 years. Why? Because I'll be honest with you, because I don't know if anybody thinks anything can be done at that intersection. I mean, you could light up the signals a little brighter, I guess, the left lane. It takes nothing more than a drive-through to realize what a problem it is. So I appreciate, and I'm not being facetious. I'm not trying to knock anything down, but what I'm saying is we can't look at these problems that exist and say, all right, we're not going to do anything about it because the city's already had a study and somebody else is going to do it. We'll work with the city. Well, that puts the dime on the city, all right? You are the one that want to build this project now. So you're going to say, all right, we're not going to do it. We're going to wait for the city to do it. We're going to have our project 3 more years. And it's all based on funding. You know how tough funding is now.
Could I jump in here for a minute?
Yeah, absolutely.
Rod Emery. The reason we we had some background from the signal inventory that talked about some of the problems, but I've done a number of road safety audits. I know the kind of things we look at. And we looked at the crash data. A lot of the data that goes into the road safety audit was already in the traffic study. And so based on other road safety audits that I've done, that I've seen, based on my 50 years of experience in intersections, we recommended a bunch of implementable, Scott listed those, back plates, clearance times, some new detection, a bunch of improvements that are similar to other improvements we're making on Lowell Street with the city right now, especially the improved detection goes a long way. So I don't think we're not doing anything. We're addressing what I think would be the conclusions from the road safety audit.
I'm not saying
something as well.
I'm not putting any blame. No, just let me finish. I'm not putting any blame anywhere. All I'm saying is how difficult it is, how expensive it is. And if we want to work together to get this project built, the project team can't rely on the city doing it. We have to rely on you, because we don't know when the city's going to be able to do it. We don't know when it's going to be funded. We don't know if it's going to be funded at all. Maybe there's people in the city that think that those improvements aren't going to help that much. So why chase good money after bad? We don't know the outlook. We don't know what the city is thinking. So that's why it's disappointing when we go to third-party peer review, that you rely on the city. Well, I don't want you to rely on the city. Right? I want you to make the recommendations and you to come up with changes. That's what I want. You want the project. We'll change it if we could. If we could afford it, it'd be changed by now. That's just my own personal thought on that. So I'm not putting any blame anywhere. I'm just saying that there are hurdles that need to be jumped. And we need the developer, the project team to help us jump those hurdles. Don't wait for the city. And just another question. The 1.5 parking ratios, and I'm going to be honest with you. I spent a lot of time on the council and on this board. I do not understand compact parking spaces. I think it's conceptual.
Small cars.
Huh?
I think that means small cars.
I don't know there's going to be that many compact cars that are going to move into that place. I don't know. All right. And I'll tell you this. If I'm pulling into a parking garage at 10 o'clock at night and I don't have a parking spot and there's a compact car there, I'll put my Escalade in there if I could. That's conceptual. Right? And we just had another 40B where it was pointed out to us and there was an issue brought up and it was an issue on sidewalks. And it was pointed out very eloquently that, we got all these other projects that went on in the city and they don't have any sidewalks. Why should we have to put sidewalks here? And, it made a lot of sense. You don't have to go too far to say that conceptually you're going to have enough parking spaces. Well, go by Dearborn Road any day, any night, and count the cars that are parked on the road. Now, you're going to say it's businesses that are working there during the day? There's a lot that's going on at the location of this project also. 1.5 parking spaces, does the number of parking spaces you want to put in include the, 6 per unit of truck or rideshare spaces or visitor spaces? Does that get put into your total parking spaces? Are you just talking, those are separated because we're going to do X amount of residential only parking spaces? I guess that's
if I could.
Jason, I think Ezra's been waiting to speak. Ezra, go
Sure.
ahead.
I was just wondering if you've got a really thorough review from Will Politz, on the city's behalf, and then you also have Rod Emery, who served as peer reviewer on this. You've heard from the applicant representing everything's been worked out. It might be good just to hear quickly from Rod and Will, was that correct? And were there any issues that haven't been worked out? Because if we get a clean bill of health on all that, then we know we agree with what the developer said.
I'll ask the questions that I'm asking, and then we'll certainly gladly let them talk. So, Will, I'll even ask you now. How is this parking space? I'm just trying to understand. You say you're doing all these nice things with visitors parking, truck parking, all that stuff. Is that Is that part of the total number of spaces in the project? I guess to anybody that wants to answer it.
Sure. Rod, I mean,
Yeah, it's
Oh,
the total parking ratio includes visitors and electric charging stations.
so it's all,
Well, you really, how can you count
But
those?
Barry, through the chair, if I can comment on this, because I think it'll answer the question. Parking ratios generally, as prescribed, include visitor spaces. So for example, when you have a prescription of 1.25 or 1.5 spaces or 1.75 spaces per unit, that decimal, that 0.25, that 0.5, that 0.75, those are the visitor spaces typically. That's the visitor space quotient with the actual prescribed unit per parking space in the whole number.
Okay.
That's the way our zoning ordinance is set up, and that's the way these parking ratios are kind of meant to be set up. In other words, they're built-in numbers. So they're always contemplating the whole. And I'll invite Scott and Mr. Emery and Will to elaborate on how parking ratios are calculated, but.
That's
Yeah.
fine. I'm really just trying to get a number, all right? So I guess I appreciate your explanation, Jason, about the 0.5. But in the presentation, one of the things said that somebody recommended the use was 0.9. So I guess the residents don't get any, and we got 0.9 towards the visitors. And that's just being facetious. I'm just trying to say that is, just make sure, all this construction on conceptual stuff is just mind-blowing to me. To me, even at that presentation, all right, we got to swing wide onto the road to get a fire truck in, and we used the fire department's vehicle. Well, if there's ever an alarm pulled at that project, if it's built, you're not going to get one vehicle. You're going to get 6. Because they're coming. That's a big unit. Plus, you're going to get ambulances. Plus, you're going to get fire department. So I just want to make sure that all these turning ratios and turning and where they've made, is there enough room for all emergency vehicles to get in there, maneuver around? That's my concern. Okay. So if you
I
could,
have a question.
that to me, that's fine.
So piggybacking on what Barry is concerned, just so we all understand, myself also, the turns, the fire trucks, everything that Barry is concerned about. So you presented it. I would imagine it was tested before you presented it. Can I assume that that's correct? That there's enough room for a fire truck and et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
So it's not just conjecture. It was actually tested and approved, and actually it's there is enough room for a fire truck to go in there, make its turn, and whatever.
Right. The way the site engineer looked at the analysis is they have a program that when you enter in the specifications of the vehicle, whether it's a garbage truck or a delivery truck or a fire truck, they're able to track the path of that vehicle through the site. And that is the results of that are what I showed previously. So
And Rod, just so we don't take the applicant's word alone, Rod, do you concur with that?
Vehicle tracks, yes.
And will you also?
well, actually, separating out from the fire truck, I had a question on the trash and box truck, if I may, because I think it's one thing if the fire truck has to cross into oncoming traffic to enter and exit the property. But I just wanted to confer through their consultant that delivery trucks and the trash trucks, when entering and exiting off the property, they'll be able to stay in their traffic lane and not go into the oncoming traffic lane. Is that correct? Or do they need to go into the other traffic lane to enter and exit?
In some cases, they do need to go into the other lane on King Street to enter or exit. That's a function of they've tried to keep the driveway narrower for pedestrian crossing, to make a shorter pedestrian crossing. I think we probably could widen the driveways if need be. They're currently 20 feet. We could widen them, maybe to 24, and then that would reduce the amount of swing that they have into the other side of King Street. But again, as I mentioned before, their sight distance, there's not that much traffic on King Street, so they're able to see and be able to pull out without really affecting the traffic flow on the other side of the street.
So through the chair, I think my recommendation would be is if the applicant isn't widening the driveway entrance to accommodate these vehicles, that you ask the police department to weigh in on this in respect to vehicles swinging out into traffic, because I know on other properties in the city they have issue with that. In respect to the fire truck, I would respectfully recommend to the board to have Captain Dowling take a look at the track layouts that S Associates is providing in respect to the fire truck once entering into the property, to make sure that they can maneuver around the parking lot itself. That'd be my recommendation. Unless the board wishes to, on the first topic, just ask the applicant to widen the driveways to eliminate this box trucks, UPS, FedEx, Amazon delivery trucks, and trash trucks from having to enter and exit the property by taking the oncoming traffic lane.
Okay, we can reach out to the police department, and Carla will reach out to Chris Dowling, and we'll get a response from him. Jason, are you all set with that?
Yes.
Sorry, Jason. I mean, just for the record, I think our response would be that it'd be our preference not to have these vehicles swinging out into the oncoming traffic lane. We'd rather see an additional 4 feet or so of curb cut out there.
The only thing that I would be concerned about is, and I'm not against that at all, I'm not the expert, but I would want to make sure that we're not extending the length of the pathways and basically detracting from the ADA compatibility that they're designed they're designed to contemplate currently. Obviously, someone who requires accessible features, I would want to make sure that they are properly accommodated by not having to travel a longer length of way to get from point A to point B.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Do you think that you should reach out to Chris Dowling and the police department?
It doesn't matter to me. I think it's perfectly fine if Carla forwards the materials to him. I'm trying to, let me just see the copies. So Chris Dowling was not copied to the package submitted to the ZBA. We can provide one. Scott, through the chair, can we put together another traffic package and send it either to Carla or to Captain Dowling directly?
Yes, whatever you prefer. We can send it directly to the captain.
Yeah, and just write a little note pursuant to request by the Zoning Board of Appeals. Please review the enclosed. particularly with regard to the fire truck turning radii. And Will, if I'm getting this, if I'm getting your comment straight, you're not as concerned about fire trucks crossing into the lane, more the box trucks and the service trucks, vehicles, trash trucks. So
Yes,
you're more concerned about having him review I just want to make sure we're asking him exactly what you want us to ask him, which is to review that the turning radii, confirm the turning radii as we present are accurate.
Yes, I would recommend
Okay.
Chris Dowling taking a look at the fire trucks, because he may have concern about the fire trucks having to go into the oncoming lane. I can't speak for Captain Dowling, but I guess it's not as concerning due to the fact that I think it'll be fewer and far between fire truck trips to the property than FedEx and Amazon coming in.
Absolutely.
I also, they're going to have lights on as they enter the property, but I would have Chris take a look at that, see if he's okay with that, but especially if he's okay with once the fire truck's on the property itself to go through. And then it would be more Captain Richards in respect to the delivery trucks and trash trucks.
And do you want to handle that, Madam Chair, through Carla, corresponding with Captain Richards?
Sure.
One thing I just want to point out, something you already know, all of the plans that were presented this evening in Scott's PowerPoint were provided to you in the traffic presentation materials. So if you do want to refer to them, you couldn't see them clearly, whatever, you have them with more detailed explanation in the materials provided to the board.
Yeah, we have it.
Excellent. And I also, if I can, through the chair, hopefully in answer to Member Osborne's question or concern with regard to the intersection mitigation at Lowell, King, and Endicott, I want to point out, the study was recent. The audit that was conducted was done, I believe, in 2016. And only one of the mitigation measures that was pointed out was actually implemented. So this notion that we don't know what's going to fix the problem, well, your own traffic consultants and your own traffic engineers at the time pointed out what the mitigation measures were to fix the problem, and the city didn't only addressed one of many mitigation concerns. Hold on a second, Barry. So what we've committed to do is work with the city to implement the rest of them that we still believe today in 2021 may not be a panacea and may not solve 100% of the problem. But I think everybody who is an expert, from Mr. Emery to Will Pollitt to Scott Thornton at Finesse, agree that once you fill in the box and do the rest of the stuff, it's going to help things. It's going to improve things. And with regard to the finances, we are going to continue the conversation and figure out how we'll all make this work. So we are definitely engaged in a conversation of shared responsibility. And it's a work in progress. So I want to make sure that you're comfortable with that, because, your characterization, I want to make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah, we're definitely.
Okay.
I was going to say, you're making my point exactly.
Good.
Right?
We're committed to making this work.
Okay, that's fine.
Stephen, did you have something to say?
I have a couple questions, and this might be through the chair more to Scott or Rod, or maybe even Will. I've seen a lot of these parking plans over the years, and it's never really garnered the question about full size. So the full size vehicles, how far up does that contemplate? Are we talking like Toyota Camry full size? Are we talking F-150? Are we talking Tahoes, Suburbans? Like, where do we, how far up on the line does it go to be considered a full size?
So the vehicle that's used for the full size is equivalent to something like an F-150. It's 19 feet. Excuse me. It's 19 feet long. I think it's 7.5 feet wide, or 7 feet wide. And the compact vehicle is more akin to an Accord or to a Camry that's 16 feet wide or 16 feet long. So I mean, there's been some discussion about vehicles, getting larger, more due to the presence of SUVs like an Escalade or a Tahoe. But then at the same, that was a trend maybe 10 years ago, where these vehicles were getting larger. Now, notwithstanding vehicles like a new Hummer, for instance, that's gigantic, but on a very small scale, and very exclusive. A lot of SUVs are getting smaller now, and electric vehicles are not that large in size. There's more of a trend to produce smaller electric cars. The SUVs that are coming out and really have been for a few years are mostly built on a passenger car chassis. So they don't have much larger dimensions than a typical passenger car.
Okay, thank you. That was my biggest concern, because it was kind of piggybacking off of Barry, where I'm looking at, okay, we have 202 spaces, 133 units, and then 60 of the units are 2-bed, 14 are 3-bed, the rest are 1-bed. It had me a little concerned. I read the dimensions, but I couldn't, compute how long is an F-150, how long is a Corolla, how long is a Camry, that kind of thing. So that puts me at a little bit more ease. I'm still I understand the numbers work as far as as all the experts state. I'm a little concerned with the amount of visitor spots you'll have here. There could be some overflow, especially if someone's going to make a 5-point turn inside of the garage in one of those larger full-size vehicles. So I have a little bit of a concern there, but I guess that's alleviated to the extent that it seems like both sides agree this works. I just want to kind of throw that out there. I'm a little uneasy with only that many visitor spots, but that makes a little more sense now. So thank you.
I jump in there just for a minute on the size of the spaces. Generally, it's not just the size of the vehicle. They usually recommend the wider spaces, like 9-foot spaces, for something that's high turnover, something that's used a lot to get in and out of the spaces, like in a shopping center. For a residence where you have a lot of long-term parking, generally you can get away with a little bit narrower or smaller space. And I think the fleet has been, because of the fuel standards being raised in all the cars, they bottomed out about 20 years ago, going to all these small spaces. So I think you're getting larger cars still in the fleet that are more fuel efficient, rather than them trending down to lower spaces. So sometimes it's dimensions and ease. You could always pull into a smaller space. It's just that you have to turn, make a very uncomfortable turn to get in there. And if you have, in my opinion, if you have too many compact spaces, then you end up with somebody down the line will end up creeping over, and you lose the space anyway. So just a way of background and correction, I didn't recommend one space per unit. That was just something, that was a statistic that MAPC recommended if you were doing the coupling of the parking, if you were charging more for that. Will and Kurt and I sat down when we started this review and looked at the zoning, which was 2 spaces per unit. And we realized that was a 20-year-old, standard that didn't apply anymore. This is about the time that the MAPC studies came out. We just had seen those come out. And I think in my original letter, I said 1.6 was the parking ratio. It's been around that number. In my recent memo that I just wrote a couple weeks ago, I said if you had the 1.25, which was what the phase 3 study said was the average, and the parking ratios, to answer one of Barry's questions, is measured on how many cars are parked overnight. That's how they measure the parking ratios. The most demand comes like 11 o'clock at night till 4 or 5 in the morning. That's when you need the most parking. During the day, you have plenty of parking, usually in a residential area. But the 1.25, I said, added to, the number of visitor spaces. It really not that far off. If I subtracted out the 14 visitor spaces from the total that they supplied, and my 1.25 plus, or added the visitor spaces, we're within 5 or 6 spaces of the same number. And what we're trying to do is build enough comfort that we don't end up with people parking in the neighborhood. So it's all brand new data that we're trying to decipher. It's like the traffic volumes being down now because of COVID-19. They're building back up again. We're sort of in that transition area. So I think we're in the ballpark. But the dimensions are not just based on the size of cars, they're based on, like I said, ease of parking and so forth. And you can always turn more. I mean, Mass DOT's headquarters in Boston at 10 Park Plaza has one of the tightest garages I've ever been in. And for me to park a car there, you have to be a magician if you go in the back wall. So I give Scott credit that they recognize that some of those garage spaces were a little tight backing in and out of them. But I think we're in a ballpark on parking.
And I'm sorry, I did have one more question through the chair.
Yep.
I don't know if it was Jason or Scott was mentioning the coupled or uncoupled spots. Are these, some of these are going to be homeowner units? Are some of these spots going to be assigned as like reserved or assigned as like to a particular unit itself so that somebody else couldn't use it like overnight or whenever?
Unmute yourself, who's ever talking.
Can't hear you, Jason.
Pardon me. I can answer that. Just because it is going to be a development and a condominium form of ownership. So as a result, yes, we will have assigned either ownership spaces or easement spaces, 6 one, half dozen of the other in that regard. But yes, they will be assigned. And there will be consideration given to more spaces going to the 3 beds and, fewer spaces, probably 1-to-1 on the 1 beds and even the 2 beds. Does that answer your question, Stephen?
It does. It does. Sorry, if you could smell the smoke, I was still thinking. So do we have any idea when, and I know that's putting the cart before the horse here, but so I assume the 12 spots that are visitor or electronic vehicle charging stations, other than that, every other spot, so the other 190 spots will be assigned.
Yes.
Okay, that
They will
includes
be assigned, not only the vehicle charging station spots, but the, although I defer to Scott on the protocol on assigning, or vehicle charging stations, I always assume are temporary in nature, much like visitor spots and the rideshare spots. Those will be backed out. Those are going to be dedicated for those purposes.
Right.
And the balance will be dedicated, so, will be dedicated to home ownership. They will be coupled with the units. So if you go to any large scale development, I guess the old Parker Brothers, the new Parker Brothers site, it's still called Jefferson, whatever it's called in Salem, right by Salem Depot. Drive through their parking lot. That's a much larger project than this is proposed, probably triple in size, must be 300 units there. But if you drive through that parking lot, there are designated visitor spaces. Residents can park in the visitor spaces without fear of being towed, but there'll certainly be plenty of spaces to accommodate the residents who live on the property. I want to point out too, to this point of parking utilization studies, There are two, I think, significant points, and Scott can fill in more detail if you want, but two things that are worth mentioning. The MAPC study, the phase 3, that focused on the North Shore communities and basically audited, I can't remember how many sites, but it was around 20 developments that, by the way, were car ownership dependent. They were not commuter sites. So this is an important point. They studied developments where the residents depended on cars to get from point A to point B. They didn't focus on that former Parker Brothers site in Salem I was telling you about, which is right on Salem Depot. They didn't focus on that. They focused on developments that were on Route 114, that type of thing, where people had to get into a car to get to work, had to get into a car to go shopping, that type of thing. Didn't have ready access to MBTA. That's important point number one. Important point number two is this is a fresh study that predates COVID by months. It's dated, and Scott, if you have it in front of you, but I believe it's dated 2020, like January or February of 2020, right before COVID, which means the study, the study group took place in the months leading up. So it's a fresh study, and it's a contemporary study, which is why we can rely on it as things start to get back to normal, and traffic starts to get back to normal, and parking utilization, more people are going to work rather than working from home. This is something that World Tech, and I don't want to put words in Mr. Emery's mouth, but World Tech relied on. We relied on it. The city thought it was a valuable, valuable to participate in because they participated along with Beverly, Salem, and Danvers. So we're dealing with fresh data.
Thanks. That does look good there with that. It's just, and my concern's less about, do we have room for the residents? There's clearly room for the residents. My concern is more that if you have more than 12 people visiting at a given time, you're going to end up with overflow. And that's just, I'm just one person. It's just my concern. I'm not overly worried about it. It's just, I know we had early on in this project back in late 2020, we had some more of the commentary coming in from other departments and public and stuff. I know that was a question, major concern. So that's the only reason why I was asking those questions, but I thank you, Jason.
Sure. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on this.
Okay. Barry, unmute yourself if you want to speak. Go ahead.
I just want to, through the chair to Jason, and this is just for my own information. Through the presentation, I saw certain things like deliveries would be scheduled for off-peak hours. Snow will be retained here. How does the development team enforce those wishes once the project is built? How do we prevent maybe if there is some overflow parking from parking in a location that might block where you have to put the snow in the winter if it's winter time, because you got to be off the road in the winter time, so they got to find a place to be. How do we prevent them from blocking where we want to put the snow once the plows start coming and the contractor starts removing the snow from the project? How do we make sure that they only schedule deliveries for off-peak hours, or they only pick up the dumpster at, after 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning? I mean, it just seems to me that it's nice to say that's then, but once it's built, who enforces those type of things? Could they lead to problems if there is no one to do that?
Sure, I can definitely.
I think Ezra, Jason, let Ezra speak, okay?
Sure.
Sure. I mean, this comes up all the time with both with 40Bs as well as projects that you approve in other contexts. It's really important for the board and the audience to know everything represented here in the application is legally binding. And when you prepare your decision, if you approve this, you'll say this is all based on the representations they made. And if they're not standing by those, then your building enforcement officer needs to go out and say, this is not correct. Your permit's in jeopardy. If there are very clear things, that they've represented, you want to put conditions in, we should make sure we have language in the conditions. The one place I'd caution you is if you treat this project different from the way you would treat other projects that aren't affordable. But in general, these sort of things, saying snow will be kept only in these areas and removed when it piles up, that's an enforceable condition. And, it does, unfortunately, nothing enforces itself. You do need to have a building officer who will go out and enforce things. But that's the general process. So.
But to speak also to, on a practical level, to answer Barry's question, this development will not be serviced by the public taxpayer-funded trash collection,
Right.
snow collection. It's all done by private contract. And so, and representing large-scale landscapers as I do, I know that timing of when you collect these things is an issue, and it's typically part of a contract with those folks. So we have some element of control from a contractual level as to when snow gets hauled off. Now, snow is a tricky thing, as you know, because it falls when it falls, and you have to clear it when you need to clear it. So those circumstances notwithstanding, we can direct our snow contractor, hey, this is when we really need this stuff trucked off site. We need you to truck it off site when people aren't going to work. We need it done off peak. We can definitely handle the garbage collection that way. Amazon, FedEx, they deliver when they deliver. We can only give them notes and tell them, gee, this is the preferred delivery time for this complex. But as far as services that we procure, we can pretty much direct our contractors to provide those services within certain timeframes. I hope that answers your question.
It did. It's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else at this point in time? Do we have anybody in the audience?
Oh, Madam Chair, if I may.
Oh, yes, go ahead. Yep.
Sure. Going back to Esri's point earlier, I would like to take advantage of quickly going through the items in our memorandum to let you know if we concur or still think there's issue with them. And then I would respectfully request that if you would allow maybe Rod Emery to do the same with his memorandum as well.
Sure.
Okay, great. So we had a late ad that I'm not sure if you even had a chance to take a look at, but we did hit on traffic and pedestrian accommodations. So one of the original items we had was respect to the roadway safety audit that Vanessa Associates said that they were going to conduct. And we're in agreement with the recommendation. Barry, to answer your earlier question, it was 2016. Howard Stein Hudson did not a full-fledged road safety audit, because a legitimate road safety audit would have our department, would have community development, would have police department, fire department, and a couple more entities out there. But they took it upon themselves, and working through the MAPC, they took a look at a couple different intersections, this being one of them, and came up with recommendations. And World Tech, I believe, also has been out to that intersection, as well as Rod had said. So the recommendations they came up with that the applicant is concurring with, we're in agreement with, to reprogram the controller out there for optimum clearance times for vehicles and pedestrians, to install the back plates, as Scott had mentioned, ADA compliant pedestrian buttons, ADA compliant ramps have recently done as part of the Lowell Street project, or that would have been on the list. And installation of video detection for all the approaches by the use of a single camera. So the way our department looks at it is we would actually be looking for the applicant to address all these items financially. So, you know, we can have a discussion with Jason and Scott if necessary, but just to, that's the opinion of our department, that these items should be addressed. But with them working with the city, that's working with us, but for them to implement. Scott, I had a question for you on, looks like you guys are putting in concrete sidewalk on King Street. We're looking for that on Ellsworth as well. And through the chair, if I may ask Scott Thornton to confirm, but or are you looking to maintain the bituminous concrete, the asphalt out there?
I think we had agreed to that. I don't think we had an issue with that. Is that right, Jason?
Well, the memo, the letter said you agreed with it, but I'm not sure the plan concurred with the agreement. So we were just looking to confirm that you agree with us and just update the plan as necessary.
Okay.
So that was that topic. The next one was the parking garage access. It was at 13.5% grade, and it did have a sharp 90-degree bend. The applicant's team has worked to try to address that concern, but we wanted to point out to the board that it's still at 11.5% grade, which is still very steep, and it still has, you know, you still have to turn in at a 90-degree, though not as bad as previous, to enter in the garage. So we wanted to point that out to the board, that is still not an ideal situation, especially in the winter. The next two topics we talked about, I think, in depth, and that was the delivery and moving trucks and asking for a template, which they provided. And now I believe the board is going to reach out to the traffic division in respect to the vehicles having to enter into the oncoming traffic lane to enter and exit. And that is the same for the trash trucks. It is our opinion that we'd rather see a larger, wider opening, especially if we're going from 20 to 24 to accommodate that. But we are interested to see what the police department has to weigh in on. They did revise the dumpster locations to be more accessible for the trash truck. We brought up this evening, and I believe Scott and his design team will probably have to work with DCI in respect to one of the trash receptacle locations. I believe it's building A, and some of the parking that accommodates, or the turnaround that accommodates for building A, needs to be addressed. It looks as though that has been proposed over the existing pavement line of Southwick Road. So that was brought up earlier. The next topic is the parking, which I won't go too much in depth because I think we've discussed that pretty thoroughly. It was our hope to, which the applicant has, reduce the number of compact spaces and bring up the number of full spaces. But at the end, we are going to defer to our trade consultant, World Tech, on the third-party review in respect to what they think is adequate based upon their study. The next one is snow storage. Although the applicant has produced areas for snow storage, and it sounds as though they would be willing to truck it out as necessary versus taking up parking. We're not under the opinion that they have the ideal or adequate number area for snow storage. We'd like to see that increased, although the ZBA can put probably a condition on the property if you chose to do so, assuming you're entertaining a vote on this project at some point, to have it hauled off and not put in parking spaces. It's not the most ideal situation to make the building commissioner's office go through and enforce that. So we'd prefer to see a larger area for snow storage to try to accommodate the snowstorms. And I think that pretty much wraps up our parking and traffic section of the memorandum. The rest of the memorandum we're prepared to discuss at the board's pleasure. If that's a later meeting, that's perfectly fine. And that's in respect to water, wastewater, and environmental. But
Wonderful. Thank you.
you're welcome. So like I said, if Madam Chair, you'd be willing to entertain Rod Emery going through any outstanding issues he may still have, I think it'd be beneficial to the board.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to, Will went over the Lowell Street, King Street, and Endicott Street intersection, the commitments there. Back at the King and Ellsworth Street, where we said the signal's not warranted anymore, I believe the applicants committed to do some pedestrian improvements there. And I think we would take, if we remove the signal, I think it would require stop sign control. So I just wanted to confirm that. The biggest issue I guess we had was on parking, and I made an observation that we usually have wider aisles in some of the parking dimensions. So maybe Scott can just take his vehicle templates and make sure that the 20-foot aisles for one of the parking aisles works just in the main parking lot. If we don't end up with a lot of 3-point turns there. I think we've done that in other studies where I made a comment about 23-foot space aisles, and I believe they've got 20. I talked about the parking ratios being close enough. I still think there's more compact spaces than we need. And an easy conversion is to take 8.5-foot spaces and make them 9s. You only lose a space or two, and then you have, adequate parking. But I'm not settled on that recommendation. If we have reduced the number of compact spaces, and I think we've talked about most of the, I think it's been a real positive change with the visitor spaces, the electric charging stations, and the shouldn't overlook the TDM measures. We're committing to joining the North Shore service and encouraging other transit uses. We're not always going to be like we're commuting today, but I think those will all help. There was a new stop signs that were along Emerson and Emerson Street that we talked that were in that, not to get lost in the shuffle there, but just some of those stop signs need to be replaced. I think that's probably it in the last stuff. I think we cleaned up a lot of the stuff from the first letter, as Scott said, so we had a lot of good back and forth on that.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Anybody else at this point in time?
Can I just ask one more question, please, Fran?
Oh, sure, Barry. Go for it.
Thank you. Through you to Jason. Jason, the snow retention areas, okay? And I understand that, the ideal thing would leave them there until they had to be checked out. Will the runoff be addressed in the environmental part? Will that be required?
Yes.
To something else?
There's a stormwater management plan that's been presented, which
That's all I
will
need to know.
be more thoroughly reviewed in May.
Okay, thank you.
So yes.
Thank you.
Good. Anybody else? Do we have anybody in the audience? I can't see. I have to refer back to Carla.
We do, but nobody's raising their hand.
Oh, nobody's raising their hand. All right. Are we basically all set for this evening's presentation?
I think so. I would just recommend that on some of these outstanding issues that Rod, Mr. Emery, Scott, and we'll get together. I do want to point out a couple of things. I just like with Farm Ave, I'm really hesitant to make a condition that the
Not anywhere near there.
that the applicant join the North Shore Transportation Management Association because it's untested. We are going to do it, just like we'll do it on Farm Avenue, just like the city's done it, just like Peabody Main Streets has done it. It's a $3,000 annual commitment, and we think it's a great concept, but we don't know if it's going to work. And if it doesn't work, then we don't want to throw good money after bad, which is why we wouldn't want it to be an ongoing commitment. Number two, the issue about mitigation at Lowell Street, Endicott Street and King Street. Yes, we are committed to engaging with the city. As far as the financial obligation, look, this is a 40B. It is well recorded that this is a pre-existing condition that exists at the site, and we're not making it any worse. And yes, we will evaluate with the city how this is going to be financially feasible, whether or not we pay for a portion of it, all of it. I think that's an open discussion. We need to know what the price tag is for that pre-existing condition that pre-exists this development. Because the bottom line is we are convinced that addressing the issue, that pre-existing issue, will also help us, in addition to the neighborhood, being good neighbors and being in an integrated neighborhood, part of that Ellsworth, King Street, Emerson Park neighborhood. It benefits all of us, and we want to make sure that this works for all of us. That's all I would. That's
Good.
all I would say on that.
Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. Anybody else? All right, so this wraps up the presentation. I'd like to thank you all very, very, very much. It was very thorough, and we do have some things to think about. We have some things to look forward to. Before you leave, Jason, we need to set up a second, not a second, but another meeting on this.
Yes.
So what are you thinking?
What's the pleasure of the board? I know we have May 3rd. You're going to open up.
Forget May 3rd. We're only want to talk about what you're doing with this project. So the 3rd.
I know, but we're looking at the calendar, right?
Right. May 3rd and May 17th are taken by meetings that we already have.
Okay. So let me understand, are we going to spend the beginning part of that meeting resolving any of the outstanding or talking about the resolution to the outstanding traffic issues and then go into civil? Is that the idea?
It might be nice.
Okay.
And
So Scott and Will and Rod, through the chair, are you going to be ready on May 10th?
Dan, check your baseball schedule.
And Dan's baseball schedule.
Or anybody else that has a schedule. I don't mean to just say Dan. Stephen, Julie. I don't have young children anymore.
I'm okay on May 10th.
May 10th should work.
I had to run and get my phone. Don't we already have a meeting on the May 10th?
No, the 3rd and the 17th.
Oh, all right. I show one on the 10th. Okay.
Well, you just might have one on the 10th now.
It was tentative.
I might as well leave it there, right?
It was tentative.
So what do you think, everybody? Everybody involved in presentations also. Are you ready to present some more and we'll listen and we'll take care of issues on May 10th?
Madam Chair, I think that really depends on the applicant's team on how fast they, I guess, provide something back. We can meet with them. I mean, I can't speak for, I'm certainly not going to try to schedule a meeting right now between myself, Rod, and Scott and Jason on a schedule, but I don't think there's any reason that we could not meet this week or next. Preferably this week, why it's fresh. So I don't think there's an issue with May 10th. It's just really, I'd leave it up to the board and the applicant to decide what they would want. If they're going to want us to review it again, or they're just going to give us a new set of plans, and they'll do a presentation. But
What do you think, Jason? So May 10th is 4 weeks.
Yeah, I think May 10th works. I mean, and quite frankly, on the civil side, there are a few issues, but nothing that I saw that was crazy insurmountable. So
Okay. So
Yeah.
May 10th?
Yeah.
Okay, so board members, just so you'll know, May 3rd, we're going to have Endicott Street and Oak Street May 10th will be King Street, and May 17th is a regular meeting. Could you just all check your schedules for me? I know that's 3 Mondays in a row, but we're still Zooming. You're still in the comfort of your home, unfortunately, because you know I'd like to see you all. The third is King Street. The 3rd is Endicott and Oak, the 10th is King, and the 17th is our regular ZBA meeting. Are we all good with that?
We need a motion to continue to the.
Can I have a motion to continue King Street until May 10th?
So moved.
Second, somebody?
Second.
All in favor? Okay,
Madam Chair, before you close out everything,
make it snappy, sweetie.
it's snappy. I just want to make sure, did you take a vote to accept all of the memos and correspondence?
Okay, hey, guess what? I know my job. We're going to do that next.
Awesome.
Okay? You want my job too?
No, I had it, and thank
Okay.
you, no.
Okay, you want to mute yourself now, dear? You can mute now, Jason.
Okay, gladly.
Okay, so everybody, I need a motion to accept the following correspondence. I have a memo from Horsley Witten on stormwater. I have a memo from Ty and Bond wastewater. We have a memo from Weston and Sampson on water. We have a peer review response from Will Politz. We have another, that's dated 3/9 and 4/9, a second one from Will Politz. And I also have Vanessa and Associates response to the 2/1/21 DPS memo. I need a motion to accept all this correspondence, please.
So moved.
Madam Chair, I apologize for interrupting you. Attached to my memorandum was another Weston and Sampson, Horsley Witten, and World Tech Engineering response. I don't know if you covered those. And the only reason I ask is you had mentioned Ty and Bond, but that wasn't included in this last package. So I don't know if you're referencing our other package.
Yes,
Yeah, peer review
Okay.
responses.
all your peer review responses.
Okay, thank you.
So I had a motion to accept by Barry and a second. What?
Yeah, second.
Second for Stephen, all in favor? Okay, so those are all accepted. All that correspondence is accepted. And now, my friends, I
Sorry,
need, go ahead.
I never know when you're going to go on. I just want to be sure, was there a request for extension from the applicant that you need to accept?
Extension for what?
They had at one point requested an extension that had given you all the way until June 30th to run the 180-day clock. Is that correct? Carla might have that. Sorry, Jason, you're muted.
Sorry, that was a request for a continuance.
A continuance, sorry.
Yeah, the board already accepted that.
Okay, sorry,
No, that's okay. Rather be safe than sorry. So where am I?
Motion to accept the meeting.
Motion, I need a motion to accept the meeting minutes from March 12th and March 22nd.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Okay, so we're ready to adjourn. I just want to go over one more time. The 26th, April 26th is going to be a regular meeting. May 3rd, we're meeting on Endicott Street and Oak. May 10th, we have King Street, and May 17th is our regular meeting. Gabish, we're all set?
Just one quick question. I'm sorry, Fran. Am I missing a memo from Will? Because I thought I heard something come in March with a.
I have 3/9/21 peer review response to 2/1/21 memo from Will Politz.
I don't think I have that.
Okay, you can call Carla in the morning and she will
Awesome.
set you all straight on that.
Wilson.
Thank you.
Madam Channel?
Yep.
I can look quickly on my hard drive, but I thought we had a February 1st and an April 9th.
That's all I have.
I have from you, Will.
Yeah, I'll find out in a second.
I have
when I pull
April,
up.
yeah, I do. I have April 9th.
Yep,
I have February 1st,
Yep.
and I have 3/9 peer review response to 2/1/21 memo from Will Pollitt. Then I have 4/9 a Will Pollitt's memo. Does that make sense?
I think we issued 2 memos on this project so far, February 1st and April 9th. So I'm not sure what the March one you're referring to is.
Yeah. Forget that.
Okay.
February 1st and
Yep.
and April 9th.
Yep, those are the only ones we have.
Right.
So just a follow-on question, are you expecting a tie-in bond response? Because that's wastewater and that deals with the I&I project in lieu of the, in lieu of paying the I&I fee.
Sure, that's a great question. I'm hoping this week there's a delay in it. Unfortunately, DCI emailed the wrong person with time bond. And that person's no longer they took a different job. So I guess that email went into the IT black hole.
I don't know.
So I
wait a
recently
minute.
figured that out. So
So-
we got to time bond. So hopefully later this week, Jason, to answer your question through the chair.
So, excuse me for interrupting, but I have a peer review of comprehensive permit application from Tie and Bond dated March 9th.
Yep, we're expecting another one.
Another one, okay. Great. So you'll take care of that?
Yes, like I said, unfortunately, when DCI sent out the review responses to the peer consultants, I don't know if they used the past email address, but a new person's taken over the project, so they've now received your correspondence, Jason.
Okay, great.
Thank you. And Fran, the tie-in bond one's important. I mean,
Okay.
it's an easy one, but it's important.
You know what I've learned, Jason? Everything is important, no matter what. All right, everybody. So that is a wrap. Thank you very, very much. I will see everybody on the 26th, which is in a couple of weeks. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you very, very much. You know, I can't wait to see you all. And don't forget my baseball schedule.
Thank you so
All
much.
set. Thank you
Thank
very,
you.
very much, everybody. I appreciate
Thank you,
it.
members of the board.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Thank
Okay.
you.